Okay, so you remember last year when we were at the Secular Student Alliance convention?
Uh-huh.
And remember Hemmett's talk?
Yeah.
About misinformation in the atheist community?
Yeah, like the Bible verse again about the better to spill your seed into the belly of a whore than on the ground.
Yeah, and he talked about the George Bush Sr. quote that is misquoted to him.
Yeah.
I have another one that I actually would like to address, and I just found this out, and I think it's very interesting, and I think it's good for people to know when you're having a discussion with people.
Mm-hmm.
People say, when you're talking about "In God We Trust," as our national motto, they say it wasn't adopted until 1957 for reasons of against communism, whatever. Which in part is true. It's a half truth.
It's paper money. Right?
Yeah. It's a half truth that gets exaggerated, and I think it's a disservice to tell half truths in order to get a point across. Yeah. So paper money in God We Trust was put on in 1957, I believe, but it had been on United States coinage since the Civil War.
Yeah, that's a pretty long time.
Which still, don't get me wrong, that's 100 years after the nation is founded. By no means is it a founding principle of the country, but I'm just saying if we're going to talk about it, it is interesting. And I realized this because I have a small coin collection. I was looking at a Mercury dime from 1917, and it said "In God We Trust" on it. I was like, what the fuck? I thought this was...
Yeah.
And it just goes to show that the internet is not always a good place to learn facts.
Yeah.
Check things.
Yeah.
Remember, just because you read something on the internet, even if it's from an atheist source, doesn't make it true. Still fact check, regardless. Right. Especially people like us, who just say things.
Yeah, we're just stupid.
If you take what we say at face value, you should reevaluate your life. Theme song.
Hugo and Jake, the Bible is jaded, and most of it taken, so get educated with Hugo and Jake. Pull up a new and stop what you're doing, it's Bible reloaded time. They call it debated, the theist will hate it, like talking to taken, but it's Hugo and Jake. So I'm with the show then, it's not candy coated, it's the Bible reloaded with Hugo and Jake, with Hugo and Jake.
Hello everyone, I'm Hugo.
And I'm Jake.
And this is the Bible Reloaded.
Yeah.
This week I'm feeling a lot better. Last time we talked, I was very ill.
Yeah,
so
he had respiratory issues, and I was avoiding him for like a week and a half.
It was beautiful.
It was beautiful.
So hopefully this one will go a little smoother. But before we actually get on to 1 Samuel, because we did finish Ruth last week, we do have sort of a shout-out.
Kind of. It's more of a self-serving shout-out. Last week and the week before that, both Hugo and I were on a show called Atheist Hangouts with Dave Viviano. He's also known as Gamma Atheist on Twitter. We've mentioned him before because he's a friend of ours, but I was the first, and it was 2 weeks ago. And I interviewed Dave Moscato, who's been on our show once, the PR director for American Atheist. We talked about a bunch of stuff, including Atheism TV, which is a huge thing, and it's groundbreaking. It's the first atheist programming station in the history of the world. So, and that's not an exaggeration. That sounds crazy, but it's not an exaggeration. That's nuts. That's a kind of a big step, considering that we're not nowhere near the most atheistic country. So you'd think it would already happen. And then Hugo was on the week after.
Yeah, and I was on with Steve Shives.
We love Steve.
Who you know probably from YouTube as well. I know he's given us a shout out, so some of you may have come here from him. We've had him on the show before. We've talked. Cool guy. Had fun talking with him. So we'll leave some links to that in the description. Go ahead and check those out. I know mine's good. I didn't watch Jake's because I don't listen to him anytime I don't have to.
It was fun. I had a good time.
Yeah. So, without further ado, though, let's move on to 1 Samuel.
So 1 Samuel is going to, basically, we're going to start moving towards David and all that shit that we're going to have to, like, the big middle chunk of the Old Testament is a bunch of David stuff, which I love as far as story and narrative. I think it's some of the best writing in the book. But it's going to be kind of a long stretch. Like, we got 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, all the Kings, Chronicles, Psalms, and Proverbs. It's going to be nuts.
They should have combined 1 and 2 Samuel into one giant Mega Samuel They could have called it that Mega Samuel.
Mega Samuel Ultra HD Double Deluxe.
Chapter 1. The Birth of Samuel. There was a certain man from Ramathane, a zoophyte from the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, an Ephraimite.
They have bad names.
I know.
Who names their kids Zuff?
I feel like it's if Klingons and Vulcans had kids, this is what their names would be.
So they'd just be really rage-driven logic machines?
Yeah.
That's scary. They're like Daleks!
He had 2 wives. One was called Hannah, and the other Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had none.
I wonder if she'll have kids later, since every barren woman has always had kids, because God.
Yeah, every time in the Old Testament they say someone is barren, it's because they're going to make them not barren, which makes them not barren. No, but I'm just saying,
yeah.
in the Old Testament,
right, yeah.
You're writing it in a past tense. You're saying, she was barren, but then she had a child. Then guess what? She probably wasn't barren.
Yeah, yep. That's, it's just like, she's a late bloomer, you know? Maybe she had her period when she was 17 instead of 11 or whenever they had.
The dairy products weren't laden with hormones, so it's a little different.
They had very few sexy 13-year-olds.
Oh, those poor people. Year after year, this man went up from his town to worship and sacrifice to the Lord Almighty at Shiloh, where Hophni and Phinehas, the 2 sons of Eli, were priests of the Lord. Whenever the day came for Elkanah to sacrifice, he would give portions of the meat to his wife Peninnah and to all her sons and daughters, but to Hannah he gave a double portion because he loved her, and the Lord had closed her womb.
The Lord had closed her womb.
The Lord, if nothing else, has some solid D when it comes to goalie as far as cervixes go.
Goalie? Cervix goalie?
Yeah. You ain't getting in my house. Nuh-uh. Nothing. Verse 6. Because the Lord had closed Hannah's womb, her rival kept provoking her in order to irritate her.
Who's her rival?
I assume the other wife.
Gary from Pokemon? Haha, bitch! Fucking Raichu!
Look at how pregnant I am! I have seed in me! This went on year after year. Whenever Hannah went up to the house of the Lord, her rival provoked her until she wept and would not eat.
Fucking Gary.
Her husband, Elkanah, would say to her, Hannah, why are you weeping? Why don't you eat? Why are you downhearted? Don't I mean more to you than 10 sons?
Ooh.
He's doing a bad job of consoling his wife.
Yeah. Remember those 10 sons you can't have? I bet I mean more than them, since they don't exist, 'cause you're barren.
Once when they had finished eating and drinking in the Shiloh, Hannah stood up. Now Eli the priest was sitting in the chair by the doorpost of the Lord's house. In her deep anguish, Hannah prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly. And she made a vow, saying, Lord Almighty, if you will only look to your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head.
So she's going to give him to be a Nazarite.
Yeah, as we've talked about before, Samson was a Nazarite, and there were some other people who were.
Yeah.
This is another very Old Testament philosophy as to how you view your children as an ownership sort of thing. She's saying, before I even make this child, I'm giving him to you.
Right. So she's not upset about not ever experiencing motherhood and the love and the joy that a child would bring into your life and raising it and, you know, making its dreams come to fruition. No, she wants it because she doesn't want to be the Jew that didn't have kids.
Yeah.
So I mean,
ancient Hebrews, and I guess a lot of ancient civilizations probably the women's role was a womb.
Right, but I mean it makes her sound all like, I don't know, not self-serving until she is self-serving.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, now you're just a cunt.
I feel she doesn't even want a kid. She just doesn't want her rival to be shitting on her because she doesn't have a kid. Verse 12. As she kept on praying to the Lord, Eli observed her mouth.
What? What? That's not a good that's the creepiest line I've ever read in this.
Hannah was praying in her heart, and her lips were moving, but her voice was not heard. Eli thought she was drunk, and said to her, How long are you going to stay drunk? Put away your wine.
Bitch.
Has he never seen someone pray silently before?
Not a woman.
Not so, my lord, Hannah replied. I am a woman who is deeply troubled. I have not been drinking wine or beer. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. Do not take your servant for a wicked woman. I have been praying here out of my great anguish and grief. Eli answered, Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him.
But I wanted someone to talk to. Go in peace.
She said, may your servant find It's interesting that he didn't ask what she was asking for. He's like, may he grant you with that. And I assume that's going to come true. So I assume he had that power. What if she had been like, I wish I had a fucking mech robot to destroy all the other Israelites?
That would have been a really cool twist, and this book would be a lot better. And we'd get far more subscribers.
She said, may your servant find favor in your eyes. Then she went her way and ate something, and her face was no longer downcast.
What'd she eat?
She's eating away her sorrow.
I like to imagine she's at least 350 now. Just Haagen-Dazs things everywhere, little empty pints.
Early the next morning, they arose and worshipped before the Lord, and then went back to their homes at Ramah. Elkanah made love to his wife Hannah, and the Lord remembered her. So in the course of time, Hannah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, saying, because I asked the Lord for him.
Samuel sounds like the word, heard from God.
In Hebrew, obviously. So, she was supposedly barren, then had a kid, not barren.
Nope.
And said she's going to give him to the Lord because she just wanted to have a kid for the sake of being able to say she had one. Okay, moving on. When her husband Elkanah went up to all his family to offer the annual sacrifice to the Lord and to fulfill his vow, Hannah did not go. She said to her husband, after the boy is weaned, I will take him and present him before the Lord, and he will live there always. Do what seems best to you, her husband Elkanah told her. Stay here until you have weaned him. Only may the Lord make good his word. So the woman stayed at home and nursed until her son she had weaned him. After he had weaned, she took the boy with her, young as he was, along with a 3-year-old bull, an ephah of flour, and a skin of wine, and brought him to the house of the Lord at Shiloh. When the bull had been sacrificed, they brought the boy to Eli, and she said to him, Pardon me, my lord. As surely you live, I am the woman who stood here beside you praying to the Lord. I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I asked of him. So now I give him to the Lord. For his whole life he will be given over to the Lord. And he worshipped the Lord there.
There was a lot of the Lord in that fucking last paragraph.
So she says, hey, remember me? I'm the one who prayed next to you a couple years ago.
Here's my kid.
Presumably he says, well, I mean, a lot of people pray here. This is like a tabernacle. But she's like, no, but like this kid happened because of that. And I promised to give him to the Lord. And he's out of that cute puppy phase. Yeah. So here you go. And presumably he went, okay.
Yeah. Also, he's got colic and he shits himself a lot. He's gonna be terrible.
I assume he was old, because it was by the time he had weaned, which I think back then, because there wasn't, like, formula, you know what I mean?
4?
It would have been old. I wouldn't...
8?
I don't know about 4, maybe 3, though. It would have been longer.
Long enough to remember it.
You see, even in agrarian societies still, and pre-agrarian, even in, like, still hunting and gathering societies, the weaning age is much older.
Some people now in, like, California still
I don't count
have their kids suck their tits until they're, like, 8 or 9.
That's, like, weird, neo-modernist moms who read too many magazines and... no, that I consider that different. So then we move on to Hannah's prayer, which we're going to paraphrase because it's another one of those poem-type things, but it's not very interesting and it doesn't get anywhere. So, you want to paraphrase, Jake?
Yeah. Thanks, God.
Here's this kid.
The end. and then we get on to something far more interesting.
Eli's wicked sons.
Yeah, so if you haven't figured out right now, Eli is the old, we'll call him pastor
priest.
guy.
He's the priest.
The Nazarite priest. He's the guy that's going to be like Samuel's like sensei, God sensei, and they're going to do like montages together and stuff. And then they're gonna wax a car. But Eli has bad sons right now, and we're gonna read about it.
Eli's sons were scoundrels. Bam! They got in right quick. They were like, we're laying down.
How do you qualify as a scoundrel? You have to wear a leather jacket and like slick your hair up in a coif and smoke cigarettes when you're underage. I don't.
You roll up cigarettes in your arm,
like
Danny Zuko. You snap in unison while walking down the street.
Yeah, and you call people like, hey, sweet mama.
Eli's sons were scoundrels. They had no regard for the Lord. Now it was the practice of the priests that whenever any of the people offered a sacrifice, the priest's servants would come with the 3-pronged fork in his hand while the meat was being boiled, and would plunge the fork into the pan or kettle or cauldron or pot. Whatever the fork brought up to the priest was to take for himself.
That sucks.
This is how they treated all the Israelites who came to Shiloh. But even before the fat was burned, the priest's servant would come and say to the person who was sacrificing, "Give the priest some meat to roast. He won't accept boiled meat from you, but only raw." If the person said to him, "Let the fat be burned first, and then take whatever you want," the servant would answer, "No, hand it over now. If you don't, I'll take it by force."
Yeah, meat bandits.
This sin of the young men was very great in the Lord's sight, for they were treating the Lord's offering with contempt. So basically, people were coming, trying to give their burnt offerings, as you do in the Old Testament.
Yep.
And the priests were basically saying, "Hey, no, give me the meat. Fuck the Lord. He doesn't need the meat." Which is fair, because I don't know what God's doing with the meat anyway. These people can at least eat it, but...
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think God has a metabolism.
But Samuel was ministering before the Lord, a boy wearing a linen ephod. Don't know what an ephod is. Here's a picture of an ephod. That's an ephod. Each year, his mother made him a little robe and took it to him when she went up to her husband to offer the annual sacrifice. "Hey, remember me? I'm your mom. I brought you a robe this year."
Oh, what about love and devotion? No.
Nope. Kind of doing... It's really complicated right now with me and your dad. It's probably not the best time for you to come back.
Gonna go do Hannah things while you do Samuel things.
You know, we're both independent people, and we both have our own things we gotta do. We gotta find ourselves, man.
Yeah. Just pretend this is like Home Alone, except we stay in France forever, and you probably die because you're uncared for.
If you didn't get it, she's a bad mother.
Yeah.
She's a terrible mother.
She's an awful person. Not Casey Anthony bad, but Octomom bad.
Verse 20. Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife, saying, "May the Lord give you children by this woman, and take the place of the one she prayed for and gave to the Lord."
Okay.
Then they would go home, and the Lord was gracious to Hannah. She gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. Clearly this
Who
bitch...
she kept.
For one thing, so she let the first one go and sees him once a year. Terrible mother.
Yeah.
Now she has 5 other kids. Bitch, you were not barren. Something was going on. Maybe you were...
She's just wiggling it all out.
Maybe she was malnourished. Maybe he was banging the other wife too much before, so he was shooting blanks.
Yeah.
But Jesus Christ, man, no. No. Now Eli, who was very old, heard about everything his sons were doing to all the Israelites, and how they slept with the women who served at the entrance to the tent of meeting.
Oh, you mean the church whores, the ones that always stand outside.
So he said to them, "Why do you do such things? I hear from all the people about these wicked deeds of yours. No, my sons, the report I hear spreading amongst the Lord's people is not good. If one person sins against another, God may mediate for the offender, but if anyone sins against the Lord, who will intercede for them? His sons, however, did not listen to their father's rebuke, for it was the Lord's will to put them to death."
So, is he messing with their free will as well? Because he wants to kill them?
Maybe. It's not made clear. And the boy Samuel continued to grow in stature, and in favor with the Lord and with the people. So clearly the other people who are working in the same field as Samson, they're also training to be, priests, basically. They're not doing such a great job, but he's doing a good job, and the people in the community are like, "Yeah, he's the good one," and the little Lord's like, "Yeah, he's also the good one. He doesn't steal my meat like an asshole." But apparently the other ones are to be put to death by the Lord or something. So that's it for now. So now we have Samuel of 1 Samuel fame. He's growing up and is being favored in the Nazarite community.
Yep.
So
he's going to have a beard, and he's going to do things.
So we'll see what happens to him as he grows up next week. Or not next week, 2 weeks from now. Next week will be a different video. Anyways, thanks everyone for watching. As we said at the beginning, check out Dave, Gamma Atheists, Atheist Hangouts. Link in the description.
You can check out my Twitter at Bible Reloaded.
Or mine at Hugo Reloaded, because I have a snappier wit and fewer characters.
Okay. Or you could check out our Patreon. We are over 60% of our way to our very first goal, in which we can make this our jobs, which is really fucking cool. And then we can go do a bunch of stuff. It'll be great. And thank you so much for everyone who's supported so far. It's crazy.
Other than that, I believe that's it for this week. So thanks for watching.
Yeah.
I'm Hugo.
I'm Jake.
And this is the Bible Reloaded. Next week, I kill Jake's parents in the hopes that he becomes the defender not that our city needs, but the one that it deserves.
I don't like him anyway.